How do I figure out what's next in my career? How do I align my work with what truly matters to me? And the biggest question of all, can I really design a career that I love? Hey, my name is Jen Smith, and I believe career success doesn't have to come at the expense of living a radiantly happy and healthy lifestyle. As a former HR leader and recruiter turned career coach, I've seen how traditional paths can leave people burned out or boxed in. And I know there's a better way, one that invites you to let go of outdated rules and outside expectations, one that evolves and supports meaningful growth over time. Whether you're feeling stuck, craving more clarity, or ready to expand within your current role and beyond, this show is for you. So grab your coffee or your kombucha, pull up a seat, and get ready to explore practical, modern strategies for building a meaningful, heart-based career. Because you deserve a long, radiantly happy, and healthy career. This is the Flourish Careers Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the Flourish Careers Podcast. I'm Jen Smith, your host, and today I'm thrilled to be here with you for another installment of Flourishing Together. This is a segment dedicated to curated conversations with industry insiders sharing wisdom and strategies for improving your work and well-being. Today, I'm delighted to introduce you to Nell Derick Debevoise Dewey, known by her friends as Nell 3D. Nell is a subtraction strategist who helps leaders find success that feels as good as it looks. She's Harvard trained, educated by horses, and known for helping high-performing leaders do more good without adding to their plates. Nell believes that systematic subtraction is the paradigm shift that's required to navigate our modern world of work. Nell, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jen. Really, really glad to be here.
Yes. And so one of the ways that we first connected was Pamela Slim's lovely Tiny Marketing Action workshop. And in there, you shared a very short introduction that caught my eye. And so I would love for you to share a little bit more about your background and maybe that time in your life or your career where you realized that doing less was actually a turning point.
Yeah. So I kind of woke up to my purpose really early when I was 12, and we can share that, if and when that's helpful. But that was always, I felt like a great privilege that I had this real clarity about what I wanted to do in the world, and on I went to do it. And it doesn't mean it was easy or smooth along the way, but I really did have that kind of seed of a red thread that guided me. And so it was almost a few years ago now, I was really in that, really feeling inspired, aligned in my work, 20 years in. So some real, weight and experience behind me, good, bad, and ugly. And I had just been in Italy, happy place. It was my birthday. I was on retreat. There was a lot of gelato, things were great. And I came home and reintegrating into real life in August. It's really quiet around here in August. And so I'm driving, a mile from home to my trainer to do my heavy lifting, because in perimenopause, that's what we have to do. And,
Right.
all the things. And I wake up to a voice saying, "Ma'am, do you need an ambulance?" Yeah, that is the reaction. And I'm like, oh, shoot. And I see that indeed in my aligned, inspired, and on purpose doing and thinking too much, I have quite literally drifted out of my lane head on into a 20-ton landscaping truck.
Oh.
And Jen, it could have been really, really bad.
Yeah.
The firefighters at the scene thought it probably should have been really
my
bad. The car was totaled, but angels above myself and the other drivers walked away without a scratch. I when I came to consciousness, I saw a flea speck of blood on my pinky nail. And I was like, somehow that to me was like, I'm okay. If that's the damage I'm seeing, I am okay. But I mean, I couldn't open the door. It was nasty. And so that was this real drop of ooh, okay, got it. Again, the alignment, the inspiration, the purpose, I was tracking, but I was doing a lot and thinking a lot. And it was not safe, literally, physically not safe.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that story. Second of all, I am just so glad that you were okay and that everyone in that situation, talk about angels, like, yes, they literally carried everybody through that. And that now tell us a little bit how that shifted your body work. So you're working in what I would call a heart-based career, but thinking all the things that caused you to drift literally out of your lane in this horrible accident. Everything's okay. And then your work shifted, I assume, from there.
Yeah. I mean, again, that was a pretty immediate lesson, right? I did have kind of a day in bed just to recover from
a day. Oh my gosh.
I know. So kind of metabolizing it then after that for days and weeks and months. And what I've recognized is, it wasn't a resilience. Like I didn't rush back after a day in a hustle way, got to get back to the grind, right? It really was something that I've recognized in myself in other cases too of pro-zilience, right? So not resilience. Let's go back, get in the driver's seat again. Don't be scared, and do less and just, but pro-zilience. Like how can I actually go forward from this thing that's happened?
Yes. Interesting.
And so, striving because I live in the suburbs. Like that is how we move around. But then, not just like back to normal, but really forward. And so that's where the subtraction started coming out and coming through to me. There were two more little bits about 4 months later where I was in the privileged position of nursing my father-in-law to his death at 98 and a half at home. 10-day decline, like pretty much textbook of how anyone would want to do it after a very full life. But just this really intimate bedside experience with soul departure.
Yes.
And then came home from a few weeks of very intense work of hospice support and my mother-in-law and all the family, and was rushed to the ER for emergency surgery because I had appendicitis.
Oh my goodness. Within just a few months of all of this, within 5 months.
This kind of holy trinity.
Holy smokes. Yeah.
Of, this very external impact and then this real like soul connection. And then this internal
explosion.
Actual explosion. You're correct. That really got this 3D-ness for me. And so the pro-zillion since then has been this idea of systematic subtraction. And so I know we'll get much more into the weeds, but that is the origin story of this method.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah, that's a moment. Most of us don't get moments that loud, things coming at us that quickly and that loud in order to make a shift or make a change. I guess like with your work around systematic subtraction, we get this like whisper or like this restlessness or even like the fatigue that comes in. So it's not so much like a loud situation that you went through, but it's a little quieter for folks. So what are some signs that someone might see or feel or hear that they need to potentially look at taking some things out of their lives? Like what are some more quiet things?
Yeah. I do think that body wisdom is really important, right? And so like persistent sticky colds, kind of undiagnosed shoulder tightness or gut stuff, and again, obviously I'm not an MD and there are physical ailments out there, right? So I'm not saying that if you're sick, it's your fault and you should use subtraction, but our bodies are really wise. And so I think that there is a lot to be listened to that actually isn't that quiet. We've just gotten used to normalizing it, My post actually that comes out in a few hours is about subtracting, doing everything quietly. Because I feel like there's this like syndrome about like these quiet whispers. I'm like, are they that quiet or do we just not want to hear them in full voice? I guess literally like the voice when you're falling asleep that's like, is this all there is? Or is this what it was supposed to look like? I guess that's quiet because you're like sleeping and it's in bed, but I don't think that's a quiet message. Like I think that's actually like, are you wasting your life? Like, that deserves to just be said out loud. And it's a little scary and intense, but it's not quiet. So I actually would just suggest that, like that all of these like quiet or like, we're kind of like, I'm not sure, but it feels like my back has been tweaked more these days.
Yeah.
If you're saying that out loud or like thinking into you probably
Right.
know that something, it's a sign of something. And
Right.
so indeed, hopefully not everyone has to run head on into a car or get an appendectomy or lose a loved one. Of course, those moments do tend to make us look at things,
Yeah,
but
they do.
I invite people to, that's what we'll talk more, the 100-day subtraction practice. That's what it's all about, is like, here's a little outside provocation to invite you to think about some of this.
Yes. And I'm glad that you mentioned that somatic wisdom, because there is so much truth to that. And you're right. Like, we do just kind of like, oh, my back always hurts. It's fine. Like, it's just, it always happens.
I'm getting older.
Yeah.
I'm a desk worker.
Exactly.
Normal.
Like, it's just part of life. But is it, so like, I think just kind of questioning some of the things like that is really impactful for folks just to kind of think about. I think about like the fatigue too. I remember one point in my career, I was just like so exhausted. I'm like, and like the back to back all day, all night, like all the things. I'm like, what is even, and then the weekends, that was another one. It was like the weekend recovery was like, oh, I have 2 days to recover and then go do it all again. Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
So I think those are all signs to consider.
Totally. And it's not all effort is created equal, and not all recovery is created equal.
Right.
So that's where the like self-knowledge as we grow and age that no one is teaching us or even encouraging us to explore, except, maybe coaches like you and resources like me and other things out there and ourselves. But we need to make that effort to really get clear on because we've all probably experienced that sense of flow where you are working hard and delivering insights and results, whether by volume or, by scope or by impact. And it's absolutely enlivening, and we can't do anything for 24/7, 365 days. We need rest. That's part of the flow cycle. But I think it's really important, exactly as you say, to question that, like, well, work is work. It's not supposed to be fun, blah, blah, blah. And then the fact that recovery is like binging Netflix all weekend and eating, indulgent comfort food, which I'm all for. I made my cookies over the snowstorm these last few days and enjoyed every bit of it. But, I think, to question what actually makes our body feel good, because that can and is in a healthy state, the default.
Yes, exactly. And I think, you and I were talking before we hit record around like kind of these shoulds and how society kind of creates these paths for us and tells us what we should be doing, what we shouldn't, not be doing. And it's really hard to take a pause and recognize like who we really are and what works for us and our own individual life and career and path. And so I loved what you were saying there, is like, you have to listen to yourself, not everybody else. And I think so many people give advice with all the right intentions on what works for them, but not everything that works for somebody else is going to work for you. So pay attention to your own self and what you can handle and what you need. And so that's a really good point there. Yeah. Speaking of society, so what I would love to hear is a time that maybe you chose not to pursue something, and then how that shaped. So I think of folks in the corporate world where I came from, where it's like, oh, Jen, we need you to lead this project, or we need you to, your next role is going to be this, or this is your next promotion. It's going to be amazing. And like, you get this like accolades and hype and like, oh, I feel so good. Like they thought of me for this, And so it's like, it's almost impossible to say no at some points. So tell us about like your perspective on that and maybe share a story.
Yeah, I have two examples that I'll share because I totally get that, and it's so real. And again, I will preface it just by saying I understand corporate politics and that this isn't always an option, right? Yeah. And I invite people to really be honest about that there might be a short-term sacrifice, compromise, intentional addition.
Yeah.
Toward a medium-term path and goal, right?
Totally.
So I really, I remind, we were talking about working with MBAs and the anxious muffins that they are early in their career, but even for mid-career folks, like, remember folks, I mean, who knows right now, but wise people are projecting 100-year life, right? Linda Grattan, my professor from LBS, is coming out with a next book on the 100-year life and how to navigate. We've got somewhere between 60 and 70 working years these days. So like, your next two are important. I'm
That's
not here to
right.
waste your 2 years, and you can stretch out the game. So that's a little bit of disclaimer that I would give people. And really important to be able to say no to things if and when that is the best decision. So I, had this early awareness about the purpose that I was here on life, on the planet to do, which briefly was really about distributing opportunity more equitably, because talent is distributed equitably. And so if we're not making sure that opportunity is also equitably distributed, it's suboptimal for society, not for the individual humans. This isn't a pity party, but we don't get the best people we need doing what they are brilliant at doing. So I headed off into the nonprofit sector because that's where you have an impact, at least in my language, in the late 90s when I was heading into the workforce. And so I had a decade of just like digging closer and closer and closer to like the root of impact. Like I wanted to like change a life. Like I wanted to go home at the end of the day and be like, that kid's life is different. And so I did that, and I got there, and I was living in Palestine. I had built a community center with a team and with some very generous international funders and very fabulous local support. And not directly, really, because I don't speak Arabic. I'm not a social worker, but I was in touch with Ahmed and his mom, who was saying he's no longer suicidal, right? Like the change was real. Yeah. And so that was phenomenal and like scratched the itch that I had felt, 20 or 15, 18 years earlier. And then it became clear that my skills were no longer exactly what they needed. I had kind of brought the international resource. I had set up some systems, hired amazing local staff, and I didn't speak Arabic and wasn't a social worker and, wasn't going to replicate. So I got introduced to some adjacent work being done in Mozambique, which is really like clearly post-conflict. And so that was exciting because you're like, there's so much more openness and, opportunity and economy that kids can plug into and do this thing of opportunity. And again, amazing local partners, powerful international things. And I got invited to lead something with the Ministry of Education.
Wow.
Around non-formal education, which has always been my jam. And I didn't take it. I spent a summer there and then came back to New York, was kind of debating. And I walked away for probably three main reasons. For me, very kind of just personally and selfishly, I had gone through a divorce and I met somebody in New York. And that was really exciting to me in a way that I had no idea. I was like, divorce, done, living the global life, like over it. And actually all of a sudden at a very like heart level, that really changed. We is my second dimension, right, of like work. And I really recognized that I had not worked in the US as an adult. I had been abroad for my 10 years since college. And so here I was in my mid-30s and I had never worked in the US. And so my like frontier market was Manhattan. I was like, what's going on around here? What do you guys need? And that felt like the challenge for me. And then from an impact point of view, I recognized that the private sector was not better or worse, but more suited to me and my background, my privileges, my skills, my training, as a place where I could make more upstream impact.
Wow.
And so I said no, to what would have to my 12-year-old self or my 22-year-old self or my 28-year-old self looked like this like really plum role. And, two roads diverged in a wood. Who knows? I'm sure that would have been a beautiful life as well. But I'm now married 10 years to the guy that I came back to New York for and have built a beautiful blended family with his kids and onward.
Oh, what a fabulous story. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's like, what I was hearing kind of between the lines too, is like really tuning into like that season of life and career that you were in and what was most important to you in that time versus the opportunity that was in front of you that looked, had all the stars around it and all the excitement around it, but really tuning into, to yourself and your values and your energy and your impact that I always talk about. That was, right in front of you. And so I always say to people too, that when you think about a decision, like a big career decision like that, there's not really a wrong choice. Like people always like, what's the right choice or what's the wrong? There really isn't a wrong choice. It's just what's most important to you right now, what's pulling at your heart right now, what's pulling at you, that you want to experience next in your career. And that's really what it comes down to. So I don't know, in terms of like any guidance for folks that are kind of thinking about that or have, two opportunities in front of them, is there anything you would add to that?
I just have found this three-dimensional approach to be so powerful.
Yeah.
And it's pretty tangible. I mean, it's philosophical, obviously, but the idea is that success is no longer, maybe at some point it was, but certainly now it is no longer one-dimensional or linear. Right. It's not like get educated, work your tush off, build credibility in a bank account, and then retire and give back, whether that's to the grandkids or the golf course or, your board hobbies or whatever it might be. That's just not the game anymore. And happily, people aren't wanting that, which I think is a beautiful evolution. But so really considering, right, my holistic well-being, intellectually, physically, morally, socially, all of the things.
Yes.
We, which is professional, my team, my company, but also my family, my personal we is equal grounds with that, right? There's no like work life. We are humans.
Right.
And then world, and not world in I have to cure cancer. The world is on my shoulders. I cannot have joy until everyone is eating healthily, right? But like your 1/8 billionth, tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of healing the world that is uniquely yours to do. Find that out, because that's key to success and satisfaction.
Yes.
And so, I'm a spreadsheet girl. Like I have a weekly spreadsheet for the last 4.5 years we're coming on. And I track weekly, like, how is me going? How is we work going? How is we family going? How is world going? How am I showing up in those ways? And how is it paying off or not? And it's not that you're looking for perfect tens in every area all the time, but I've just found it to be a really stable three-dimensional way to make these decisions and to track where you're going. So I think I like that filter. To your point, it's not a 10-step process. It's not prescriptive. And all the more powerful, it's simply a lens that people can make their own.
Yeah, it's a great model. So me, we, world. Is that how you think about it? Awesome. Yeah.
Exactly right.
It's a really, really smart model just to kind of consider. And I love how you said about like rating yourself. I think I downloaded, you have a free spreadsheet. I think I downloaded that. I got to take a closer look at it. But it kind of just allows you to go in and do a quick check and rate yourself and where you are in these 3 key areas. And it makes it digestible and just to kind of give yourself a pulse when things, when you're on autopilot and things are going crazy, just take that pause and do a quick check-in. So really, really helpful. Thank you for sharing that.
Can I share? And I'll keep it tight, but I think the other story is also helpful. And so I had closed down my company. I was starting this career of thought leadership and writing and speaking. And I realized that boards would be a natural place for me to possibly contribute, in the future. And so I joined a few boards. And one of them was kind of a startup nonprofit, really aligned with my passion for helping nonprofits with business models and revenue models. And they said, we're actually looking for a treasurer to sit on exec committee. And I was like, I have an MBA. I'll do that. Again, I was like so flattered. I'm like, I'm going to join the board. And you want me? Like, yes, done. And, membership is really related to our finances. So to chair membership committee would make a lot of sense. I'm like, great. Yeah, I'm all in. Jen, a year in, I had 8 hours a month of recurring calendar invites for all these committees.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, it was a nightmare is all I'll say. And so I talked to the executive director as nomination season's coming up and I'm like, hey, I'm out. Like, I know it was a 2-year term. I'm so sorry. Bill has been a great vice treasurer. He'll step in, no problem. You're in fine hands, but I gotta go. This is too much. And she's like, okay, well, sad. I've really loved working with you and I find you really helpful as a coach kind of on the side, which I was also doing outside of the 8 hours. You don't have to be treasurer and chair 2 committees, right? You could just be a board member. And I was like, oh, I could? That's fun. Okay. And so basically I took this thing, totally went in over my head, was so resentful and annoyed and not helpful because I was showing up and multitasking and distracted and unprepared and whatever. And so I just went to being a board member. So 2 hours a quarter of meeting. And then donated an hour and a half a quarter of pro bono consulting coaching to the ED, which I loved and she found super useful, and restructured the board meeting setup using my facilitation skills to make the board meetings not kind of a boring committee readout, but like an engaging brainstorm and community builder.
Ooh, yeah.
So I subtracted these like goofy, like should prestigious promotions and got to do what I love that has massive impact in about a quarter of the time.
Yes, that's a great example. Thank you for bringing that in, because I think that happens a lot too when folks even get asked, we call it voluntold. Like you get voluntold to do all these. It's okay to say no, or hey, can we restructure the way that this looks? Or maybe I don't have to be on 8 hours a week or month. Like maybe we can figure out how to do this differently and I can still contribute in a different way. So I think that's it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I think that's a really good example that it can be that kind of like happy medium, or however you want to call that works for both sides. So,
and there's just so much opportunity. We, the Gold Star junkies, we're like, well, I should, and that's how it works. We do more, and that's what you get rewarded for. My question is like, how's that working? Job seekers, what are you seeing? Like, why did you leave what you left?
Right.
Whether that was self-imposed or forced on you, how are those workplaces working?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? How are the boards you're involved with working? How is parenting working? Like, look around at the statistics in the case. And so, the risk is not to like do something different and reimagine a role and maybe suggest, gosh, wouldn't it be more impactful if I didn't sit bitter in 8 hours of meetings a week while I multitask and am suboptimally productive in everything?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Is that a risk? Rather than being like, hey, what if I give you an hour and a half of my brilliance for free that I'm going to love, that's going to change you as a leader? Is that risky? I mean, maybe in some like stick in the mud, command and control places, but do you really want to hang out there anyway?
Yeah, no, exactly. Now, you brought up a question that I had kind of in the back of my mind as you were sharing that story around capacity. And so I would just love your thoughts on capacity. So how do you recognize what your capacity is and or that it's like becoming too much? Because a lot of people, I think you call them helpers, I call them heart-based, they want to do more, they care. But then all of a sudden it's like what you were saying, like it's too much, you get resentful. And then in my world, it's like, I'm leaving this job, I'm leaving this company because they're just throwing all this stuff at me and no one's listening and I can't do it. So talk to me a little bit about capacity. Like, how do you help people with that?
Only with the filters, because I think
same filters.
There's no rule, right? Of like, it's 40 hours a week or it's 20 hours a week of meetings and 10 hours a week of creative time. Like,
what do
we
you
all
want?
have to figure that out for ourselves. What can you handle? What energizes you? Back to the point of like, not all effort is created equally. And so there may be some things that you've got to do for whatever reason right now that totally drain you, right? And so you can't cut out that hour a day or 5 hour, whatever that amount is, you've got to do it. And so I think it's about being honest about, I'm drained after that hour. Like I need an hour. I need a run. I need a fresh meal. I need to laugh with a friend or on YouTube because it really drains me. So now I have to count that as 10 hours because I need 5 hours of recovery, for example, versus the 10 hours I get to do of writing a week. I only wish it were 100,
Right.
Like and again, brains tire out at some point. It's not actually unlimited, but I don't think it's healthy or realistic to say like, I have this many hours to work and I'm going to parcel it out in these 4 areas. I think it has to be done in real time in experiments. I also don't think it's like projectable. I think you've got to play and see, and try not to overpromise and underdeliver. That's never anyone's favorite way to show up, but to be honest as much as you can with other people but certainly with yourself, and kind of build experiments of like what works, when and how, and in combination with what else.
Yeah.
So not a formula.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I guess like one of the things that came up when you were talking about that was I talk about energy audits, like when people are exploring a different type of role, like, hey,
Yep.
what really brought you energy this week and then what
Yes.
didn't? And so maybe it's taking a look at the things that drained you. And I loved how you shared, okay, this was really 1 hour, but it took me 5 hours to recover. So that's actually 6 hours of my time that went to this one thing that I hate. So maybe can I delegate that? Can I get some type of technology to help me with that, whatever it is, like, but just taking that inventory and figuring out what is driving your energy versus what isn't. I was just thinking of like even projects, like scope creep on a project. It just happens so fast. And then all of a sudden you're like, what happened? So, but I think you're right. Like taking a pause and just like noticing this over time and doing experiments and trying things out, figuring out what works for you and what doesn't, and then making adjustments along the way. So
that's where this muscle of subtraction has become so powerful.
That's a good call.
I'm still building it myself a few years in. And so just really encourage people to use that as like a lens or a filter in every meeting as every project starts up. What projects are we letting go of to make room for this, right? Improvement is only possible when there is capacity.
Right.
And so how are you thinking about that? And then in check-in meetings, are we still doing anything that isn't working that we could or need to let go of?
Right.
In your job search, right?
Yes.
If cold applications through LinkedIn haven't worked for 3 months and you're reading some stuff that they actually aren't really working for anyone else either, maybe you subtract that, even though it feels insane to be searching for a job without applying to any jobs.
Exactly.
I think that's where we're at, So I think that lens and that muscle of looking for what to let go of is also a prereq at this point, honestly, because the inflow is relentless.
Too much.
And it's got an unbelievably robust architecture and budget behind it.
It does. This is true. This is true. And I'm grateful that you shared that piece around the job seeker, because it is like when you're in between jobs or you don't have that safety underneath you. It's like more. I got to do more applications, more cold this, all the things that everyone's telling me, when really, if you just focused in on a couple things that you really want to be doing and did those really well, like really thoughtful conversations with folks that you're excited to work with, that's probably going to pay off versus, the kind of the chaotic energy in all the places. So, and you also mentioned that it's a muscle, which I really appreciate because that tells me that it takes practice. And this isn't a flip the switch. This is a practice over time. And so I'm glad that you had mentioned that as well. So there's no right or wrong. There's no perfect. It's practice. And we've got to get better at it in today's world for sure.
Yeah.
So
I haven't used this one before, but all I can picture is Taylor Swift's posture bra that has been advertised to me. But like, we're all so overdeveloped here, right? And like, actually what a lot of us need is apparently just a bra. But also maybe muscles, because that seems like a better idea to counter this.
Yes.
And it's exactly right. This is do more posture, right? Like emails, calls, phone, more. Versus like
expansive.
Yes. What am I like pausing and like maybe saying no to, or maybe saying yes, but in a balanced way, strong in my center so that I can do it well. Not like, sure, I can do that. Ugh.
Yeah. Let me squeeze it in. Like, it's like, let me feel like I can squeeze somebody. It's like, no, we're not doing that. So, I like that visual. That's my word for this year is expansive. So I really liked that. That was really helpful. Thank you. Can you share an example? Like, what have you seen happen when people really kind of start forming this muscle and really trust the muscle of subtraction? Maybe for these helpers and heart-centered folks that are maybe a little bit afraid to do a little bit less. Like, what happens? What have you seen?
Yeah, it's really magic. I'll share 2 little nuggets. I'll try to be concise about a man in work and then a job seeker changer. So the man was a manager. He was a professional at a logistics company, and he'd always wanted to manage people. And it was COVID. Logistics was blowing up. They were doing really well. And so he got his chance. And so he had a team. He jumped in head first, weekly one-on-ones, weekly team meeting. He's researching resources to follow up on the one-on-ones, And he gets home it's a Thursday night that he has his daughter a few nights a week. And so it's a Thursday and he's putting her to bed and, doing their whole routine. And she looks up at him and she's like, "Daddy?" And he's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "When are we going to cook dinner again together?" And so he's up all night and he calls his coach the next day and he's like, what do I let go of? Do I subtract my version of parenting, which is cooking dinner together and thinking about nutrition and having fun and eating, or people management, which I wanted for so long, but I guess maybe isn't real right now when I have this young human that I'm parenting. And then we had done some of the workshops months earlier, and he's like, hang on, this is the wrong level of subtraction. Like, I'm being way too brutal about it, not systematic. And so he turned the weekly team talks to walk and talks.
Nice.
He let go of the one-on-ones weekly because they're talking weekly and they're on Slack all the time. So decided that every other 30 minutes was plenty, and that he was not serving anyone by doing the research to find the resources to teach them what to learn based on the things, right? So boom, he saves himself 2.5 hours a week, he figured. They keep a night of takeout because it's really fun. They cook the other 2 nights a week. And the role of this, right, the connecting the dots impact is he's walking more. He's encouraging his team to walk. He's modeling healthy and engaged parenting for his team. He's helping them do their own learning in a structured way because he's set the example of giving them resources to follow up, but now they're getting it for themselves, right? Like on and on and on and on. And so that's, I think, I just love, I always come back to that. I love that example of a way in work to subtract and find that win-win-win.
Yeah.
Because like truly, it's not just like managing expectations and moderating the performance a little bit. No, it's better. He was a better manager and dad and human for all of those things.
And I just have to say, leave it to the littles to bring it to your attention that something's off, right? So bless him for actually listening and doing something about it, because that's such a great real life example.
Yeah. And then another client came to work with me in the horses, which we talked about a little bit earlier, sidebar. And she had gotten in, very successful, very high flying, quickly rising corporate leader over her career in kind of innovation and marketing data. And beloved, really thoughtful leader, which is why we did all this cool coaching with her team. And she got moved by acquisition to a new company where the culture was really different. And she was just like, I don't want to do this here. Like, I'm out, And so pretty quickly she kind of did what she could do and then extracted herself and was like, I think I'm retired. Keep in mind, she's in her mid 40s. Like, she could retire because things had gone well. And she was going to do other stuff and consult. And she did some of that and played with creativity and did some speaking and some consulting. And she was really keen on like this pause, right? Of like honor the pause was the wisdom that came from the horses. And kind of sheepishly, 8 months later into this, she calls me. She's like, hey, I took a job. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, congratulations. That's it. The team sounds great. The culture sounds great. You love building teams. They are so lucky to have you. And what she had subtracted was that work was her whole and only identity.
That's a big one.
And so again, she came back to that 3D, right? Subtract, get rid of this one-dimensional nonsense, get 3D about it, and go in that way, eyes wide open. And so again, what comes is this company and this nascent team that they didn't have get this phenomenal, experienced, wise, empathetic, creative, fun leader.
Right.
She gets very specific impact that doesn't have some of the chaos and uncertainty of consulting, which was starting to rub, right? Like, and so boom, who knows, 10 more years of work comes out of this, which isn't like, there's the IRA and like there's the employment data. It's like impact and
aligned,
and joy and other careers and economic growth. Like, that's what happens.
Yeah, that ripple effect is huge when you think about it that way. So, and I love that you mentioned the pause. I'm such a huge fan of just quiet the noise, tune in, and the answers will show up and arrive, and it will all work itself out. So yes, excellent examples. Now, you recently launched a 100-day subtraction practice on Substack, which I'm super excited to check out. So have you noticed any like shifts for people when they like immediately commit to doing this? So like any examples of like some immediate things that shift for folks?
Yeah, I think we're early. So please, please, please come join us and play. And people will be able to get the whole, you can start from day one if you want. It runs through May 1st. So there's time. You can jump in wherever you want, midstream or go back, or, it's a DIY journey with daily guidance and songs, which is very important.
Oh, fun.
So at the very least, you can have a dance break. But, I think in, these early days, it's day 5 today. So very, very early. The first thing is just this paradigm shift,
right?
Of permission.
Thinking of it differently. Yes.
About permission that maybe actual success starts to come from subtraction.
Yeah.
At least in some ways, in some choices. And so that's been amazing. I mean, there have been some specific tidbits of like, hey, I subtracted this meeting that I've been going to. I subtracted this heavy thinking about this opportunity that I was feeling so pressured about. And I'm just now being curious and exploring. And it's all of a sudden back to being a great opportunity, right? So there's all versions of like the tactics and the tidbits that people are subtracting. But the biggest, funnest thing is just the invitation and permission to like, maybe doing less might be the answer here.
Yes. Ooh, I love it. And I love all the little things because that really is what adds up, like the heavy thinking, the mindset shift, all of those things really add up. So we will make sure that link is in the show notes for anyone that wants to join. And then as we wrap up, a question I like to ask everybody is a flourishing favorite. So a book or a podcast or a resource that's had a significant impact on you in your career.
Yes. So many. I will share 2. I was brainstorming in prep and I was like, this and this and this and this.
I know there's a lot. I know.
Subtract, slow your roll, like walk the talk. And so a mind and a body. The mind is The Power of Fun.
Oh.
It's a beautiful book. And I just wrote that down because I'm like, oh, I know her name. And of course, it's escaping my head right now.
Okay.
She just co-published with Jonathan Haidt a book for kids, actually. So her first book that kind of made her famous was about breaking up with your cell phone. And I think she's doing a challenge shortly.
I know who you're talking about too, right? But I can't think of her name. I know exactly who you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah. So, but The Power of Fun is her kind of middle book that I would say is a little bit of a sleeper. And if it rings, like to me, fun is like really appealing.
Yes.
I was like, I got to read that. It's beautiful and it's fun to listen to for sure. She reads it. So the audiobook is really nice. And she does talk about devices and phone breakups for sure. Yes. But it's a little more like holistic life. And I think it's very beautiful. And I go back to it a lot and really think about fun.
Catherine Price.
And the body one is a workout called The Class. Ooh. It's in New York. They have a studio in LA and they do some pop-ups, maybe Vancouver, but they're online. They're fully digital.
Nice.
And it was the first method to really get me into my body. Ooh. Having been like a disembodied head for the first 20 years of my career. It's very musical. It's powerful. It's not easy. I mean, it's like burpees, it's high intensity interval training and some bar moves and some yoga inspiration. And all the teachers have a different vibe. So I'll let people find their vibe, but it is a delightful, and that's not, that kind of undersells it. It was a game-changing sweat for me.
Wow. Okay, cool. Yeah, I like how you explained like getting the head back in the body, because I work with a lot of folks that we're just so super disconnected. I've been there myself. It's really tricky. And so that's a really good resource. So thank you.
It's missed opportunity, right? It's like data that we're not getting.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
All right, Nell, thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom. This was just so much fun. So I'm certain people are going to want to connect with you. So where do you hang out on the interwebs?
Yeah, I definitely hang out the most on my Substack, which is called Subtract to Succeed. And that's where the practice is happening, the 100-day practice. I know there's a 90-day guest pass. So it's kind of the first piece that's paywalled, but I'm super happy for your listeners to join us for free to check it out and see if they like it. So come hang hang out there. Nell3D.com is my homepage, which has links to all the things to follow my work and speaking and all of that. And I'm very happily open and promiscuous on LinkedIn. So if people want to connect there, I'm easy to find because of my long, unique name.
Yes.
So definitely feel free to share there. I just find Substack is a little more organic these days and kind of natural. So I'm on LinkedIn, but the conversations feel a bit more real on Substack.
Excellent. I've been really getting into Substack. I like it. I feel like it's like when I open it up, I'm like, have a coffee and like reading a newspaper, magazine. Like it's very delightful. So I'm glad you're over there.
Somewhat overwhelming, but also somewhat refreshingly kind of chaotic. Like you can't really tell if people are 30-year writers with 50,000 followers or like showed up last week and are just smart and thoughtful and writing for their 12 followers.
Yes.
And it's kind of meritocratic in some way, at least.
Interesting that you say that. You know what? The word thoughtful really describes it to me, no matter what. If it's somebody that's a seasoned writer or just starting, everyone seems very thoughtful, which I think that's the differentiator between the other socials.
And the rest of the world. Right now.
And the rest of the world. Yeah, exactly. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. We will make sure all these links are in the show notes. And what a delight. So thank you for joining me today.
You too, Jen. Thank you so much.
Listeners, as always, the notes from today's episode will be on the blog at flourish.careers/blog. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time.